how much can you make yourself an asset? I think Modi proved himself an invaluable asset to Trump when he did Howdy Trump in this thing and Howdy Modi in Texas. Your value in an American politician's eyes skyrockets. The problem is our guys out there have been selling themselves for like, sir, ek photo le lunga main aapse. Literally, they will donate whatever the maximum amount is just to take a photo. The Iranians, the moment they get sanctions lifted, like, Indians, who are you? We don't know you. Get lost. You're like dirty black people, and they're very racist, by the way. That Shia-Sunni split, it happened at the exact right time. You know, that thing happening 1979. 10 years before the end of the Afghan war, where all the Afghan jihadis were then redirected to Kashmir. It really saved us because it kept 15 to 20% of Kashmir's population out of the jihad. They specified at that time, in the first year you are getting one engine.
So, in
the second year you are getting two engines.
Then two Tejas.
For the next 4 years after that, you're only getting two engines.
Okay.
There has been no slippage in timeline. Show us the contract. My conspiracy theory is the Air Force started this whole Ranveer Allahabadia thing.
Right.
Because the Ranveer Allahabadia story completely gobbled up the Air Force Chief Hal story. The documents are public record. The Air Force has bent over backwards to accommodate Hal and the Tejas. Unfortunately, there is no other way of doing this other than the PMO, because the PMO is the only office where, you know, the babus start shitting their pants even without losing seniority. And it's good that we have got a stern Prime Minister in control, because he doesn't tolerate all this nautanki-bazi. Who asked you to buy 6 Scorpions if you want to buy? You knew you wanted 24 diesel-electric submarines. Why didn't you buy 24? Again, you've put out a contract for 6. Do you know one thing DRDO is very good at? Is paying a lot of YouTubers and tweeters and things to, DRDO ने बोला है ये हो जाएगा शानदार, और they'll talk about it as if it's already done. अरे आपको पता नहीं है सर, ये अभिजीत का बच्चा है. There is actually Amka is coming out tomorrow. I went and saw it myself. Strategic culture and strategic depth is fantastic.
Number 1 army,
the supreme national interest. Wazir Ala, Wazir Azam. And you saw what I tweeted out with regards to all those smartwatches. They were taking it inside the goddamn nuclear submarine, which is your prize asset.
Hello friends, my name is Chitresh Kapoor and welcome to Defensive Offense English, your go-to podcast when it comes to matters of national security defense. Today we have the Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Sir, you've been very highly requested. A lot of people have asked us that we really need to call you. So we're going to talk about different matters, and the flavor of today's season is people are talking about Trump. How is Trump as far as India is concerned? Is he actually good, or is it like Begani Shadi mein Abdullah Diwana? A lot of people are jumping around, Trump. So are we going to see a lot of things in a positive way?
Yes. Now look, Trump was very good for us even in his first term, right? Tariffs, you're going to get hit with tariffs. Trust me on this. We got hit with Harley Davidson tariffs even the first time around, right? We have a strategy for it. This is where the uselessness of the babu comes in. It turns into an asset, which is that you prolong talks for 3.5 years, and by the end of 3.5 years, Trump is gone and the new administration has come in. Okay? Now, the issue here is, what worries me with all the revelations that have happened in the past 2 weeks is that you are realizing how much your electoral processes and your state has been compromised by American interests. And it was not your own counterintelligence that picked up all of this. It is an American cost-cutting exercise that revealed all of this. Your own foreign minister goes and claims that Open Societies Foundation and George Soros is a dangerous man. But he ends up at the same Munich Security Conference that is closely intertwined with what George Soros himself does, is partially funded by it. This kind of, I don't know where you're coming from. Are you serious about dealing with George Soros, or are you just, interested in making noises and things like that? It shows you we're still a third world country. We don't have the state capacity, forensic capacity, or we're so compromised that even if we do, when we're so compromised, we can't act on it. Right? That is a very scary thing. And in this, we have to understand this is pure dumb luck that thanks to Trump, huge problems of yours abroad have been solved. Okay? So it is a net positive. Now, there is no such thing as a perfect marriage. Even in the best of marriages, the wife's cooking will be bad, the husband's snoring will be bad. कुछ भी हो सकता है. बीबी बेवड़ी हो सकती है, husband अय्याश हो सकता है, whatever. Okay. So there is no zero friction relationship. But it is as good as we can get. And the pros that accrue to India under Trump are far greater than the previous administration. Remember, in the previous administration, there was a very clear division. The Labour Secretary Gina Raimondo and Jake Sullivan, the NSA, were Team India through and through and through. Okay. Anthony Blinken and a lot of other people were not, they were quite hostile towards India. Right? In this administration, you just don't have people who are hostile towards India. So you look at people like Tulsi Gabbard or Vance. I mean, he's our son-in-law. Our son-in-law, our adopted daughter, our actual son who's heading up the FBI. They're all very, very pro-India. And even in Team Doge, there are several Indian engineers doing work. It's over. I don't think Indians and pro-Indians, most Indians are quite anti-India when they're
I was going to say that.
The thing is, those people haven't found any traction in this government. It is all people known to be fairly pro-India. And they're not pro-India for the sake of being pro-India. They're pro-America. It just so happens that they realize that India and America's interests are best served by working together, not trying to undermine one another.
So when he keeps saying, I love Hindus in his own way, I love Hindus. So does he really mean, do we need to be cautious? Or is India, they need India at this point of time, hence he's saying and doing things?
Look, they need India, yes, but he's also very well disposed off towards Indians. Okay. In spite of the fact the community votes overwhelmingly Democrat. But this time things change significantly. 32% I think of the population for the first time voted Republican. Right.
So there is this Republican Hindu convention and all that stuff.
There's a Hindu American Foundation and all of that, who are all very good. But the thing is, we really need to amp up our game. The problem is we can't because, where there are 10 Indians, there are 24 Indian associations. And none of them, everybody will tell you the other guy is a fraud. And according to everybody else except them is a fraud. Okay? Just like it is in India as well. I mean, this is the classic, we can't even unite when Ghori is coming to attack us kind of thing. So you have all of these problems. As opposed to Jewish associations, which are, they'll fight viciously amongst each other, but if Israel is targeted, they all unite. Okay. Most of them unite. I mean, rotten apples are there.
They're everywhere.
But, this is something we really need to understand how to navigate it. It is also our responsibility to be an asset. How much can you make yourself an asset? I think Modi proved himself an invaluable asset to Trump when he did Howdy Trump Modi in this thing and Howdy Modi in Texas. Because then Trump realized the convening power and his ability to swing. Because even if half the auditorium had swung, it was great for Trump. People don't realize how small political gatherings in America are. If you can put together an ordinary community center, yahan jo shadi hota hai na, and I'm not even talking about the airport road wale, the big shadis out there. I'm talking about the small community the Lodi Community Center or the Panchsheel Enclave Club and things like that.
About 400-500 people.
400-500 people. If you put that together, your value in an American politician's eyes skyrockets. The problem is our guys out there have been selling themselves for like, sir, ek photo le lunga main aapse. They will donate whatever the maximum amount is just to take a photo. And that's officially. In cash, people don't realize how much cash actually moves around in the Canadian and American system. There's
to
always
click pictures?
No. Cash donations are illegal.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they give cash. But just to click a picture.
So, but what about now our relation with Russia? Does that take a backseat?
No. I think because Trump himself is very well disposed towards Russia, If you notice the conversation, they spoke for 90 minutes, Trump and Putin. And he spoke to, and you saw Zelensky. Zelensky was crying in the Munich Security Conference saying, I felt very hurt that, he spoke to Putin first and then called me up. And he should at least meet me before he meets Putin. I mean, seriously, people are dying and this is your priority, who he meets first. So Putin, Trump has a very poor view of Ukraine because he knows how much Ukraine colluded on the Russia report, that Burisma and things like that, Hunter Biden and everything. So he has it out for Ukraine. He may not show it, but he has it out for Ukraine. He's not well disposed towards Ukraine. The amount of money that has been pilfered by Ukraine and all the aid and everything is something he will not tolerate. His focus is on China. And he sees Russia and India as being indispensable in that.
Because we sandwich them from north and south.
Exactly, from north and south, which is very convenient for him. If he can just get Russia out of China's monopsony, because Russia is now completely under Chinese monopsony. Because, we're trying to break it. So China gets most of its gas from Russia. And it gets it at 1/3 the price that Europe pays or paid for it before they cut off Russian gas. Now, when you're getting that much, your entire market is dependent, your commodities market is dependent on exports to China. And Russia may, other than commodities and agricultural products, what do they have to export right now?
Nothing.
Because the Chinese haven't bought Russian weapons in the longest time because they've copied everything and reverse engineered everything.
Which they're good at.
Which they're very good at. I mean, there's nuances to it, but anyway. So, it's Trump all-up is going to be pretty good for us.
So will we continue to buy oil from them or?
We need to continue to buy oil from them. We need to, in fact, buy a lot more oil and Trump will be very open to it.
Okay.
He will have absolutely, but remember, even the past administration actually thanked us for it. Because the way we were dealing with Russian oil actually defrayed the costs that would have, the inflationary effects that America and Europe are feeling because of cutting off Russian gas, right? Oil and gas. So it's a very good thing. Trump will be much more supportive. Even the Chabahar sanctions, have you noticed? We haven't ceased our business with Iran. And yet America hasn't announced any sanctions on us so far. We're still importing stuff from Chabahar.
Okay, because we've had the longest of relations with Iran.
Look, it's also not a very it's a sterile relationship. What happens is Chabahar we started ideating it 30 years back. We built the port and everything. If you go to Chabahar, you'll see most of the people there are Indians. Unlike other Iranian cuisine, in Chabahar they actually eat very spicy food. Their fish curry is actually like the ambotik style that you get in Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
And Colombo in Tamil Nadu and all of that. Lots of tamarind. For the first time in Iran, I saw the use of chili powder. And things
when was
like that? This was 2019?
All right,
something
not
like that.
so long ago.
Not so long back. And what ended up happening out there was they would not let you finish the Zeranj-Dalaram highway. And the same way, the Taliban allowed you to build up to 15 kilometers of the border, but they didn't let you link it up. So we could never really use it. Okay. Now, the Iranians, the moment they get sanctions lifted, like, Indians, who are you? We don't know you. Get lost. You're like dirty black people, and they're very racist, by the way. I've had Iranians, Iranians I've literally had Iranians come up. They're not racist in a bad way. It's just that unconscious, you say something, is like, what the hell? They're like, how do you guys eat so much spices? Eating spices makes you dark. I'd never heard this theory, but it's a very common theory in Iran. They have no time for you, no interest in you. They have zero curiosity about India and Iran. As opposed to the great curiosity about Iran we have in India, because we fancy ourselves to be great exponents of the Farsi language and things like that, right? But when everybody sanctions them, then they're like, 500 years of shared history. For 200 years, India was producing more Farsi literature than Iran. Khamenei's favorite poet is Allama Iqbal, nonsense like this, right? I mean, listen, the last people-to-people interaction between India and Iran was bloody Nadir Shah coming and slaughtering 30,000 Delhi walas here. I mean, people-to-people interaction you're talking about, at least have the sense to see what your last great people-to-people interaction was. And people have forgotten, going with the Israeli narrative on the Iranian regime doesn't suit us. Because the Shah was vitriolically anti-India. The Ayatollahs have been much more, well, let's put it this way, they're far, far, far less problematic and far, far, far less anti-India. In fact, I would say they're almost India neutral.
See, we need them because of Pakistan reason as well.
Exactly, right. So we have our own reasons to engage with them. And that actually we've explained to Trump very well, which is why there is no sanctions on us right now.
Right.
I mean, he may, but when we come to that hill, we'll deal with it.
Right. So, do we see any development happening in Chabahar or anything like that in the next 3-4 years?
It's just lying dead as it is. It's never made economic sense, right? It's more like a thing where we have something clearly with the Iranians that if their break becomes irreversible, we can break their international isolation up to a point.
Right.
Right. So it's always a useful tool to have. I think the far more useful thing, which has actually served our interests, has been the Shia-Sunni split. That Shia-Sunni split, it happened at the exact right time. That thing happening 1979, 10 years before the end of the Afghan war, where all the Afghan jihadis were then redirected to Kashmir. It really saved us because it kept 15 to 20% of Kashmir's population out of the jihad. There's only been one Shia terrorist who's ever been caught in Kashmir.
Okay.
One.
Right.
And the very fact that they were getting Wahhabis, they used to keep pelting the Ashura processions, the Muharram processions and things like that, right? So I would say it is more a case of the Shia-Sunni split having saved us. This is like, those Hail Mary pass, what they call a Hail Mary pass in America. It's like that. It's come out of nowhere, nothing to do with us. Same as Trump going after expenditure and us realizing what a deep, deep state we had.
Now I'm going to address the elephant in the room, which is F-35. And a lot of people are talking about, hey, you know what, we're going to get F-35. But does it really make sense? We have F-35, we'll have Tejas, probably AMCA in 15, 20, 30 years or maybe God knows when. Then we have Rafale, we have Su-30. So we have 5-6 different types of aircrafts. Does it make sense? Can we actually afford it?
You tell me one major air force. One serious major air force that has 5-6 types of aircraft.
None. US has 2, 3?
They have, the Navy will have F-18s and F-35. The Air Force will have F-35 and F-15. The F-35 will completely replace the F-16.
F-16, okay.
Right. Now, if a superpower can only afford 3 kinds of aircraft, how are you able to, you're going to have Rafale, Tejas, Mirage 2000, Sukhoi 30, a Jaguar, possibly AMCA, possibly F-35 if you're going to buy it. I hope not. Or Su-27, whatever. Okay. Are you mad? And MiG-29.
And S-400.
And S-400. Well, which is, I have my own reservations. We've seen how useless they are with what happened in Iran with the Israeli strike. This is not sustainable. This is just not sustainable.
Then what do we do? Then the other option is Su-57.
No, there are lots of other options. First is you can join the European 6th Gen fighter program. Okay. But my personal preference right now is to bring the AMCA under, drop all this TEBDF and all this bullshit, drop Tejas right now, have a very clear thing as to what technology you can make, what you cannot, what you're going to harvest. Because you know what DRDO does, or HAL? They're like, sir, we can do it. It's all empire building. You want more and more projects which you don't deliver. You bring in accountability. You sack them. Do you remember when the missile program was going nowhere? I think Shivarur was the one that did the piece in India Today at that time. They literally sacked the entire missile team. This was in 2003, 4 or 5, something like that. And they brought in a whole new team, after which the graph till then the missile graph was like that. Suddenly it went like that. Because it got transferred to and this was only the nuclear missiles, only the nuclear capable missiles, right? Which is why your Akash has been in development for what, 40 years? It's basically a SA-6, one of those 1970s Soviet anti-aircraft missiles that you've, I don't know what you've done to it, or NAG or whatever. And you look at the nuclear missiles, the nuclear capable ones, the long range ones, they have gone exponentially. You look at the ballistic missile submarine. It comes under the Prime Minister, so whoosh.
But we can't have every department reporting to the PMO.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't, right? So, but I think it is now crisis enough situation that you need to focus down on the AMCA. Stop wasting your time on IJT, AJT, all this blah, blah nonsense. And by the way, you tell me which other country has PJT, IJT and AJT. You have an entry-level propeller and then you have an advanced jet trainer. Just because these clowns wanted some more jobs and budget, they came up with a nonsense category called intermediate jet trainer. When are you going to call out the fiscal indiscipline in all of this? This is actually turning into a national security threat.
No, when the Indian Air Force Chief very recently has said,
there was
about
a test pilot. There was a test pilot who comes and does all this big, I've got the biggest schlong nonsense on Twitter. Tejas. He was the bugger. I have WhatsApp conversations. I won't make it public, obviously, because then he'll know who it was sent to. This was the same goddamn bugger who was the loudest advocate for the Su-57. And when we withdrew from the Su-57 program, he suddenly found the virtues of Tejas. So you have outright frauds out there who are just interested in empire building.
Right? At the cost of nation.
Exactly. I'm glad the Air Chief Marshal called it out. He's finally said what we've all been saying. And you've seen how the defensive offensive thing is. Every time we've done a program, all this, they all say America ka dalla, Boeing ka dalla, what whore of Lockheed Martin, whatever. Now that the Air Chief Marshal has said it, what happened?
Nothing. But will it make a difference?
Listen, you're bringing in a 4.5 generation fighter when China has brought out a 6th generation.
Yes.
I mean, it's not a 6th generation fighter. It's a goddamn fraud. That's a different matter. But
theoretically it is.
Yeah, it is. So it's the time for this plane to come out was the 90s or the early 2000s. At this point, it makes absolutely no sense.
So my question is, everybody plays a blame game. GE ne engine nahi diye, GE ne engine nahi diye.
GE, you go read my friend Zone 5 Aviation, Angad Singh's articles. He wrote this 6 years back when the 414 engine, 6 or 8 years back.
F414 engines of GE.
Was signed.
Right.
They specified at that time, in the first year, you are getting one engine.
So in
the second year, you are getting 2 engines.
Then 2 Tejas.
For the next 4 years after that, you're only getting 2 engines.
Okay.
There has been no slippage in timeline. Show us the contract.
So is that contract available?
Now you've got one. Listen, we know.
Okay,
We've spoken to people out there. I've known this for the last 6 years. Na? You need to know what to look for. But in this case, well, somebody offered it up to me 6 years back. So I've known about it for the last, I don't know, 6-8 years, whatever, whenever the contract was signed. This was the delivery schedule. In the next 5 years, you're going to get 10 engines if you're lucky. 9 engines. Okay, that is the schedule. That is all they can afford to do with their production line right now.
And who signed this from our side?
This government only. Okay. Well, it was HAL or DRDO, one of them, whoever it was. Okay, you at least have one plane with that one engine. What prevents you from giving that to the Air Force?
Nothing.
No, because there are other problems with the plane. There was a context to what the Air Chief Marshal said. This is not new. HAL is known for the last 8 years because they themselves signed off on the delivery schedule. हिम्मत है तो उनको बोलो delivery schedule निकालने के लिए. ये तो लिखा गया था भाई. And now they've got some of their sastandi YouTubers to go around saying, oh, the Americans have did this. And then the mainstream media has also picked this up. The Americans have backstabbed us and not given us. They said it clearly. It is written. If you know how to do a Google search, go find that article. It's been written publicly that this is the schedule.
So why hasn't GE gone public? Because their image is also getting tarnished.
No. Their thing is, we're like, what? Look, these guys, every one of these guys is used to India shitting on them. They know if they open their mouths, they will not get a repeat contract.
Achha. Sales.
You understand? Because the last thing you do is make a babu look stupid. Because then there becomes an investigation. The one thing you do, you can screw over our political leaders, but don't you dare screw over the real prime minister who is actually the babu of the country. You think the PMO is in Loknayak Marg. The PMO is in Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy in Mussoorie. That is the real PMO of the country. Okay. So,
what do we do if we don't take F-35? Then what? Su-57? But I don't know whether it is a fifth generation at all.
Look, the Su-57 is the exact same plane that we paid to co-develop.
And then we backed out of it.
Such pathetic quality. We backed out of it. It does not have any stealth. If you squish some things, it doesn't become stealth. There are some fundamental principles to stealth, which is, first of all, the quality of construction. You look at the close-up high-res shots of it. It is such incredibly shoddy construction. There is no way this is a fifth-gen fighter just based on the construction quality.
So when they show those
old-level screws with the cross thing which you have to put in. The most glaring mistake is the fact that the engine is almost perfectly aligned with the intake. And that is the biggest reflector of radar beams that there is.
So its heat signature would obviously go up?
No, its radar signature would go up.
Okay.
The engines are huge. There is no infrared suppression, which is another big problem. Okay. You tell me what great Russian have you seen a great Russian ASA radar?
No.
Have you seen a Russian gallium nitride radar? No. Have you seen or gallium arsenide radar? Have you seen Russian frequency selective glass? No. Have you seen Russian frequency selective material that only allows your radar material through, but not the other guy's radar material to come back in? No. Russian jam. You've seen the caliber of Russian aviation in Ukraine. No?
Yeah.
It is so bad that they're fighting it without air cover. It is like you've gone back to the early days of World War I before the planes actually started coming in. It is literally being fought without air cover. If Sukhoi 57 is such a great plane,
why aren't they flying
it?
So what's the number one aircraft of Russian Air Force?
They have right now is the Su-57. Now they themselves haven't placed orders for more than 30, 40. What does that tell you about the plane? And then why did they have to come up with a single engine Su-75? See, the Su-75 at least has a somewhat more intelligent design in that it chooses a kind of MiG-21 thing where the radome masks the radar. Okay. It is still, it is the best you can do with the kind of rudimentary technology you have. See, Russian technology is stuck in the 1980s.
Pre-Cold
War, after which there was no money. You understand? You need to invest huge amounts of money to keep a military industrial complex current. They make wonders with what they have. Is it state of the art? No, I'm sorry, it is not. But let's talk about the Chinese systems. The Chinese systems are crappy from a completely different point of view. Okay. Which is they are also not sixth generation. One of the key aspects of a sixth generation is directed energy. What Chinese directed energy weapon have you seen? Nothing. Have we seen frequency selective glass or frequency selective radomes from the Chinese? No, we have not. They have huge engine problems. They have still not solved the engine bleed problem. And that is, of course, why Pakistan did not want a Chinese engine for its JF-17. It wanted a Russian engine. Right? Apparently, even their J-10s are going to have Russian engines or whatever in them. I forget now if that has been changed. But I can tell you a lot of Pakistanis I spoke to were very unhappy when the Chinese insisted that a Chinese ASA radar will be put there. They fundamentally believe it's a mistake. That imagine the Griffo, which is a old phased array. People in the Pakistan Air Force in private consider that to be superior to a Chinese ASA.
Okay.
That's where you're at. They buy a Chinese AVAX because they can no longer afford to buy any more Swedish ARIs, right? And Sweden isn't selling to them. So this is one of those things where we also need to understand that China does posh make-believe. Russia, there is no make-believe at all. What you see is what you get, right? The American plane has a different set of problems. You see, it is like, it's not before an aircraft used to be a system. The F-35 is a system of systems. It won't work if you just buy that. You have to buy the entire system. You have to make everything compatible for it to work properly. That is the true miracle of the F-35. Which means for every $1 billion you spend on an F-35, you have to spend anywhere between $3 to $10 billion fixing everything else. You know, the Australians, they decided to buy the F-35 when I was still there.
Okay.
Do you know how much it cost Australia? They miscalculated the cost. And mind you, this is a completely NATO intercompatible military. They severely miscalculated the cost of integration when they saw that a lot of their radars and interrogator friend and foe, this and that didn't work with that. A lot of their comms equipment didn't work with that. They have quietly over the last 10 years spent anywhere between $40 to $45 billion fixing all the other back-end stuff. For India, it will be, now this is a NATO compatible military I'm talking about. For India, it is a lot worse. It is a lot worse. Because if you look at it purely in terms of tonnage that you fire, all you can do is 4 AMRAAMs inside. 4 AMRAAMs doesn't make sense to us just buying it like that. Right? You need more. You need greater internal carriage. Now, if you modify it, it is such an integrated aircraft, the cost of modification is prohibitive. You want your India-specific variations to be made, it will take years.
And the missile of F-35 won't be compatible for Su-30 or...
Never.
Not at all.
Especially after what's happened, they'll never allow it to be compatible with anything else, right? Now, the good thing, of course, is the S-400 won't be able to find or target it. So you're not afraid of shooting down your own. Like you saw what happened with the F-35 and the Iran airstrike.
Right.
Iran didn't even know what the hell was coming. Right? They've literally flown over their nuclear reactors and bombed certain buildings in...
They came back.
Yeah. So, I mean, imagine you're not even able to detect it. The attack is over even before you know it has started.
But then you have to end up buying 3-4 times of other things to make it compatible.
You have to. You have to. Otherwise, you're essentially buying a glorified F-16.
Yeah, absolutely.
The by itself, the differential over the F-16 that it represents is maybe 10 to 15%.
And the cost component is much, much higher.
Much higher. Because remember, an F-16 costs what, about $8,000 to $10,000 per hour to fly. An F-35 costs $35,000 to fly. You have that kind of money to fly it. But I'm sure they will, it depends on which Babu's son gets what Princeton fellowship or Yale fellowship.
आ जाएगा.
वो आ जाएगा. अब क्या करेंगे?
Okay. Because I'm just surprised nothing much has happened after the Indian Air Force chief, whatever he said. I mean, there were a few words here and there, but nothing beyond that. I mean, and it can't go higher than that. If an Air Force chief...
My conspiracy theory is the Air Force started this whole Ranveer Allahabadia thing.
Right.
Because the Ranveer Allahabadia story completely gobbled up the Air Force Chief HAL story. Mind you, this is not the first time an Air Chief has said this. Air Chief Marshal Dhanua, he said, he went to HAL, and this is, you can see the video, and said, Bhai, I will buy as many Tejas as you want me to buy. You just tell the government to budget for 2 of some other aircraft to protect it. So, every time you talk to the Air Force in private, they will be like, and the documents are public record. The Air Force has bent over backwards to accommodate HAL and the Tejas.
But we do not have any option other than HAL. What do we do? Shut it down?
No, see, look, you don't shut it down.
Right.
See, when you can make, why is ISRO so wildly successful?
Reporting to PMO.
We're reporting the PMO.
Yeah.
Why are your missile programs so wildly successful? Again, right?
Yeah.
All you need is accountability. You start threatening to sack people. Or if you don't sack, cancel their...
But Babu ko kaun sack karega? Wo?
Yeah,
Go to some other
that is
department.
the issue.
He'll go to some other department.
Exactly.
And they presume they know everything.
They,
from
this is the
railways
thing.
to
exactly.
satellite.
Yeah, and you are...
Yeah. They know everything.
Exactly. So then what are you going to do? You understand? So there are two options right now. One is you start taking your AMCA bloody seriously. Unfortunately, there is no other way of doing this other than the PMO, because the PMO is the only office where, the Babus start shitting their pants even without losing seniority. And it's good that we have got a stern prime minister in control, because he doesn't tolerate all this nautanki bazi. The second is you join the European 6th gen fighter program. But the problem again that I have with the European 6th gen fighter is it is a system of systems. 5th and 6th gen are, so even your own 5th gen AMCA is not really going to be 5th gen unless it is compatible with all your other assets. You haven't made all your other assets compatible.
2035 ho jayega. Probably.
कुछ नहीं होगा boss, कुछ नहीं होगा. You know how the IAF MCC works, the command, this thing. It's technically it's genius.
Right.
Because, it's basically if somebody told you to hold your ear like this, you decided to hold your ear like that. Okay. It's taking out whatever you can suck out of an aircraft and making it optimally compatible, which isn't true compatibility, but it's something. Now, because Sweden has decided to make its entire forces NATO compatible, the entire Swedish data link system is now up for sale.
Okay.
You buy it. Because it's one of those things which you can then start slotting into everything. It is a NATO compatible system. Well, it is not a NATO compatible system, but it's a NATO integrable system, which you can start putting in everything. You pass it off as something that you've come up with. Do the deal in secret, come up with some name. Don't reinvent the wheel. See, this whole reinvention of the wheel is corruption, because it is available in the market, but some babu sitting at HAL or DRDO and in the defense ministry wants to make a quick buck and wants to empire build. So they'll come and demand, oh, sir, we can also do this, sir. No. Agar hai, you buy it. Buy the complete transfer. This is like the M777. We should have bought the entire production line. The C-17, we now realize we need a lot more. What prevented you? You bought the M777 and the C-17 at the end of the production line. Why couldn't you just buy the goddamn production line? You could have done it. You didn't do it. Who asked you to buy 6 Scorpions if you want to buy? You knew you wanted 24 diesel electric submarines. Why didn't you buy 24? Again, you've put out a contract for 6. Why? And you're making the same mistakes the Soviets did. Actually, especially Admiral Gorshkov destroyed the Russian Navy. He wouldn't design missiles to fit into submarines. The missiles would keep developing somewhere else, and he would keep demanding in his tenure alone. He oversaw 7 different kinds of nuclear submarines, each one totally different reactor, totally different everything, just to fit those different kinds of missiles. So now you have this missile that is 10 meters long and God knows what, 700 wide and things like that. So you want an entire, and you've got this fetish for vertical launch. I don't know who's put this fetish. Bhai, if it launches, what is your problem if it goes out through a torpedo tube or it vertical launches? No, we want vertical launch, and it should be 750 which is completely non-standard. Because even the heavyweight torpedo tube isn't like that. But at least with a torpedo tube, it is a very easily scalable thing. It is, you just have to increase the cut. You have to do your weights and measures, because these are heavier torpedoes and things. It affects the front back buoyancy and things. It is still, it's an expense. I'm not minimizing it, but it is still a more doable thing than putting a whole vertical launch segment in between. But see, you need an extremely trained political leadership to notice all this bullshit that is happening and call it out. You don't.
So, since we were talking about submarines, I would like to understand from you, what is our, Indian Navy maritime strategy. Is there a strategy in place? Because all we hear is we're buying or we're making our own. We should be going with frigates and all those things, but we're going with aircraft carriers. Does it make sense?
See, not just frigates. The problem here is, you need one standard bunch of surface combat ships.
Right.
Okay. Why is it that the American Navy can do with just one type of surface combatant, or at most two, which is your Arleigh class destroyer, the Aegis class? And they have supplementary purchases here and there. First was the littoral combat ship, which turned out to be a disaster. Americans also do disasters every now and then. But now they're going for the Constellation class frigate, okay, which is mostly for anti-submarine and littoral water operations and things. Now, when you have an enemy like China, you want one class of principal surface combatant, which is bulked up on the number of missiles it can launch, which is bulked up on electronics. You need one class of submarines. What prevented you from just signing the deal for 24 Scorpions when you could? You're complicating your own training chain. You're complicating your own logistics chain. South Korea bought one class of submarine from the Germans, and it has such an advanced industrial base. It was then able to develop its own class of submarines after that. You do not have that industrial base. You got the technology for the Scorpion. You're still not able to develop it. You got technology for the Type 1500. You were still not able to develop it. So ab kaun sa kaddu pe teer maroge bhai? So let's get over this bullshit that we're very competent at these things. Okay, you can't. The skills have already been lost for the Type 1500. Because unless you have what makes things cheaper? It is iteration of the same thing that keeps making it cheaper.
Mass.
If you buy 24 submarines, you create the economies of scale to develop the industry for it. Nobody is going to set up a factory just to supply you with 6 submarines or the parts for 6 submarines. You understand? It has to be 24. Then you have to have a plan for what is going to come after the 24. Because when the 24th, by the time the 12th submarine is built, the manufacturers should now be thinking of what is the follow-up. How can we do little incremental changes? The way modern technology works is there will be 50, 60,000 different suppliers for that one submarine. Each part will be made by a different company, by those 50, 60,000 suppliers. Each one of them will incrementally increase the capacity by 1 or 2%. But cumulatively, synergistically, when it all fits into your next generation of submarines, that improvement will be a full 100% or more. That is how you take things forward. You don't plan for it. And frigates are even worse. You're doing classes of 3. 3 of these ships, then 3 destroyers. What do you need frigates and destroyers for, bhai? Come across one goddamn class of ship, no? They're not even stealth. I mean, calling those monstrosities stealth is like saying, an elephant's ass is stealth. They are not. They do not comply to modern VLO standards.
Okay.
Israeli radar, Russian missile. Do you think the Israelis are going to give you the source codes for it? I've literally been to a missile firing where your Israeli missile couldn't shoot down 2 slow subsonic drones. They were flying at 300-400 kilometers per hour. They both failed.
Okay.
Have you read about it? No. Biggest scandal around. The defense minister was present at that. The Russians won't give you the source codes to integrate with the Israeli thing. And the Israelis won't give you the source codes to integrate
so
with
when
the
they say technology transfer, does it really happen? Or
see, the thing is, we are so obsessed with technology transfer, we don't want to get into the details of the technology transfer.
किस चीज का किया वो पता नहीं.
हाँ, वो पता नहीं है. Do you even have the industrial base to absorb it? नहीं है. Then what are you doing?
Vote मिल गए. That's it.
You were meant to develop the rocket propulsion for the Barak 8.
Yeah.
You failed. So then the Israelis are supplying you the entire missile now. You're at most doing the software for it. Ab kya? Now you already know rocket motors because do you know we failed even to do that with the Yakhont, with the BrahMos. It took, the Russians literally had to come handhold us over several years. I don't know if you've cracked it now. Maybe I haven't. But I sat down with these Russian BrahMos guys, and the story they gave me was like, I'm sitting in this. It was all pulling my hair out. Okay. What do you do? See, understand economics is the first principle of your defense. You need one class of submarine. You need one class of principal surface combatant. Uske baad supplementary purchases here and there for say minesweepers. I mean, you don't have minesweepers anymore. You have mine counter vessels. It's an integrated thing. These things you can do on the side.
So I remember when Australia had cancelled the deal for French submarines, I guess. That was about, I think, a year and a half.
You could have gone in.
We didn't do anything, no?
And remember, the French were willing to give you nuclear submarines.
They would have given us,
which is something you've wanted. Because right now, your nuclear submarines are Russian multi-hull designs, which are not optimal. Because the water lapping inside, they play havoc with the digital signal processing of the new sonars. These new French sonars are so good. You come out of Le Havre in France, the main port, you can literally listen to ships going into New York Harbor 4,000 kilometers away.
Okay.
And you don't have to listen to it anymore. It's all digitally listened to, and it's
but
matched.
We didn't do anything.
We didn't do anything.
And they would have given us at much lower prices.
And the thing was, you didn't even have to pay development costs because you'd be buying bana. And if you're buying, say, 24 of them, I'm a big proponent of nuclear submarines. Understand the amount of leverage you have over them. You have to give us reactor technology. You have to give us 50% of DCNS. You have to give us 50% of Areva, which means every French reactor sold, 50% of it will be made in India.
All right.
And to overcome the thing, they might give you low-end technology to manufacture here. They will keep the high-end. You say no. For every sale, one reactor will be made in France. One whole reactor will be made in India.
Okay.
There were so many things that could have been done. Okay, but fine, you missed the boat on that.
So, and
what prevented you, even now, from buying 24 submarines and doing the budgetary submissions for the next 15, 20 years? Nothing. This is the kind of chronic mismanagement we see. If a businessman did this, his business would be bankrupt by now. Mahindra or Tata, they know how many cars, they have a fair gauge of how many cars they're going to produce. All their supplier deals are done 10, 15 years.
Easily.
In advance. Easy.
So the suppliers know which car is coming when.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, seriously? कोई भी एक बंदा business school नहीं गया है? नहीं गया. But when all those IS babus rocked up in your alma mater ISB, the ISB staff were telling me that their attitude was, I am not here to learn from you. I'm here to teach you what I know about business. Single exam pass namunas.
I've heard that before.
No, I've seen it. Okay. I've actually seen video recordings of these namunas. They've quietly video recorded them also, some of them. But anyway, it's what do you do? Nobody's willing to call it out. See, we can actually do a lot, but you need to be extremely razor sharp focused.
And whatever I've heard, the French submarines are plug and play, right? So you don't have to cut submarine. You just plug and play model.
It's literally held down by gravity. You open it, you refuel it,
and that's it.
And that's it. You don't have to slice the submarine open. Now,
and you have to do it once in 10 years?
If you had bought it, depending on the usage, 7 to 10 years.
Okay.
Overuse karoge to 5 years. But see, it doesn't matter out there because you can open it and refuel it.
नहीं, but और हमें 24 इकट्ठा मिल रही हैं. That's the most important part.
That is the most important thing. And you can then say, bro, I need the entire fuel reprocessing cycle. Okay. Which then also means you can then tell them, I need a stock of enough uranium that's going to last me for the next 150 years. उसमें से हमने nuclear bomb के लिए कुछ इधर उधर निकाल दिया. तो I mean, we're not going to say that, but चलता है. Okay. I'm sorry, but it is just so goddamn amateurish. Okay. The Su-57 does not suit us. The F-35 does not suit us.
We can't afford F-35.
This submarine procurement is going to be a disaster. I mean, it's going to be a great success in that we're going to get it. mark my words, there is going to be cost escalation. There is going to be significant cost escalation from the quoted price.
Okay.
From the quoted price, mark my words, because they want all these vertical launched and all that nonsense, there is going to be price escalation. I know this, you know this. Anybody who's run a theka, daru ka theka, or anybody who's run even a pan shop on the roadside knows this better than your UPSC pass wonders. So much for UPSC and so much for running a pan ka theka or a daru ka thela.
But they are the actual owners of the country.
They are. But look, I mean, if you have a government with a mandate, why aren't they cracking down on this shit?
When they had majority, then they didn't. Now they don't have a majority.
No, they still can.
Yeah.
It's not a weaker government in any stretch. They still can, but they're not. And you know what the problems are, but you still won't do it.
So what about our crazy obsession with aircraft carriers?
So this is the thing. We went on saying, listen, aircraft carriers, keep one training aircraft carrier because it's a skill that needs to be maintained. Okay, the landing, the takeoff, the system of systems. I mean, an aircraft carrier is an extremely complex beast.
Do we need it in 21st century?
Yes and no. And yes and no, I'll tell you why. Right now, your main thing is what an aircraft carrier brings is sea dominance. What you need right now, because you're faced with a much larger economy with a much greater industrial base, which is China. What you need right now is solid sea denial, which is that any Chinese captain should shit his pants thinking he's coming into the Indian Ocean. Okay, what do you need for that? Now, anti-submarine warfare is something that is best done by three assets. It has to be done by submarines, surface ships, and aircraft.
Okay.
You need all three of them to be totally compatible. You can't have 100 different types of everything.
Ek Russian hogi, ek Israeli hogi,
kilo this. Listen, forget talking to each other. They can't even talk within the platform itself.
So that's the reason why people buy an ecosystem. You've got a MacBook and then you've got an iPhone.
Now you don't have to buy American.
Right.
But you can buy an ecosystem. You don't even want to do that. See, who's looking after the macro? Nobody. It's a joke. Now you need one class of surface ships. You need one class of surface submarines. Then you need some specialized vessels here and there, which you can do piecemeal acquisition for. There is no harm in that. In fact, you should not be wasting your industrial capacity trying to manufacture everything. Nobody can do that. Even America can't do it these days. Systems have become so complex that, America insisted on joint development with 10, 12 countries for the F-35. A lot of parts for the F-35 are not manufactured in America, in fact. So if America can't do it, how the hell do you think you can do it? Okay, so you can't. Accept that. This is the Alcoholics Anonymous prayer, and it applies. Alcoholics Anonymous is the exact definition of DRDO HAL. In fact, I would say Alcoholics Anonymous is more honorable than DRDO HAL, which is God give me the strength to change the things I can, the courage to accept what I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two. That is I think the Alcoholics Anonymous prayer should become the motto of DRDO and HAL. I'm dead serious about this. God, give me the wisdom. The secular guys will be up in arms. They didn't like the ISRO chief going to Tirupati. So let's say, Constitution, please give me the wisdom to give me the strength to change the things I can. Or maybe Karl Marx. Karl Marx, please give me the wisdom to change the strength to change what I can. The courage to accept
that what I can't,
and the wisdom to know the difference.
Right.
Whatever gets your goat, bro, do it. You need ruthless standardization. What was your problem when you got the M777? You could have used the same barrel and just mated it with a tracked platform and a wheeled platform. No. One will be Korean, one will be Czechoslovak, one will be American, one will be Liechtensteinese. I don't know the next thing you'll buy from Lesotho or Swaziland. Bro, this is criminal mismanagement. this kind of mismanagement, you will go to jail in the private sector for this kind of rubbish. Private sector people have been jailed for less. Right? मेरा भी टैक्स पैसा है पर आपका ये टैक्स पैसा है जितना भुगतना है. And but you know one thing DRDO is very good at is paying a lot of YouTubers and tweeters and things to DRDO ने बोला है ये हो जाएगा शानदार, और they'll talk about it as if it's already done. अरे आपको पता नहीं है सर, ये अभिजीत का बच्चा है. There is actually Amka is coming out tomorrow. I went and saw it myself. I went and had sex with the exhaust. You don't know, sir.
Amka is not coming before 2035.
Arey, sir, stop. How much money were you given to say this? How much money were you given?
Anti-national. Now I'm an anti-national.
Great. Go saying it.
Yeah.
You know, there's delusion is an infinite commodity. You know, it's like you can. My issue is the country is the one that suffers because of this kind of shit. I think at least with AMCA, there is a desperate need. It needs to come out of the PM.
Okay, so a very important question. Is AMCA actually there or is it just on the paper?
It's on paper.
So there is no prototype, there is nothing.
You know, Pushan Das and I, when I was still at ORF, we wrote the paper on the AMCA based on a briefing by Hal.
Okay.
It was so pathetic. They didn't even understand 101 of what fifth generation warfare was. You know why? And this is actually a cultural issue. They are not allowed to mix with foreigners. If you go meet a foreigner, even by accident, you have to fill out a 12-page incident report.
The HAL guys.
You're not anybody. Even if the air chief marshal is at a hotel and some foreigner makes the mistake of coming up and talking to him, he has to fill a 12-page report.
What was the discussion all about?
Yeah.
Why did it happen?
Right. Who was this person who introduced you, etc., etc. Now, very, very problematic because they are not able to, and you know, the military attaches, once they leave, they are not allowed to keep in touch with all their contacts in DC or Paris or London or whatever. You can't have a transfer of information like this. It's a severely, severely stunted information absorption system. Fifth gen is all about a system of systems. Right? So before, I don't know, when I was in school, the first computer we used was this BBC computer. You remember the BBC computers?
Black and white with curves.
Now the only system of systems that you needed was the electricity. Okay. Today, if your computer doesn't have Wi-Fi ke liye, you need a fiber optic cable coming to your house. You need electricity. You need all these different sets of programs that should be compatible with your computer. Okay. Do you remember the BBC computer had literally you had to use it in school to learn basic coding, but there were no real programs that came with it. And what programs used to be 5 or 10, and they used to be insanely expensive. Now imagine in all of this, imagine an Apple ecosystem. But the problem with military is because technically a person who knows security would never connect their secure phone or secure computer with a public network. So what ends up happening is, if Apple were a military manufacturer, the Wi-Fi would not connect to a open network. It would be an approved network. It would not be compatible with any Android or Unix system. Other Unix system, and Apple itself is, it would not be Microsoft Word and this thing compatible.
Pages and Keynote.
Exactly. It would only be Pages, Keynote, which are shitty, but anyway, they are what they are. You couldn't even just plug in any cable into it and make it work. Aajkal, who actually puts a cable in, but anyway. You can't. Now, this is how military equipment is made these days.
Yeah.
Much more integrated with itself, much less integrated with anything that it is not. They didn't get that. They were focusing on purely on the kinetics, the range, and even the range, they got it so horribly wrong. You know that. With 2 engines and double the engines of the F-35 and half the fuel of the F-35. They were claiming it was going to go twice the distance. Basic arithmetic error, yeah. This isn't some quantum physics that I'm asking you to calculate. Okay. Very, very problematic. Even going by the paradigm of the AMCA, I would say that, it might come out as a window-dressed product like the Chinese 6th Gen. There's some very, very serious introspection needed. And I'm sorry, but this is being run like a clown show.
And
it is not a funny clown show. It is have you seen the Chucky series?
No, yeah.
The clown that goes around, it's a psychopathic clown who's possessed by demons who goes around killing people.
Achha.
So this isn't a funny clown. This is a Chucky clown.
And if you were to crystal gaze, do you think China threat is going to happen in the next 4 to 5 years or post-Trump? What is going to happen? What's going to happen to Taiwan?
Look, China, something is going to happen and I'll tell you why.
And are we ready?
I don't know if it's going to happen to us. I don't know who they'll pick.
Yeah.
Because they're highly unpredictable. You don't know what their paradigms are. But China is probably in more economic peril than America is with its debt. Because the level of
everything's failed.
Because all the bad debts, the train system is $1 trillion in debt. Construction that we know of is $3 trillion in debt. What was it, Everglade or whatever, to collapse ho gaya, jo bhi
the
tha,
real estate.
whatever. Literally everything they're putting their hand to now is failing. Because in 2008, they made the same mistake that Deng Xiaoping swore he would never make, which is have the Soviet attitude to money that it grows on trees. They thought throwing money at a problem fixes it. It stimulates demand artificially. It does not. They've made that mistake. They are artificially controlling that. And in order to keep it, they know if you graduate to the next level, which is services and high innovation, innovation is a product of freedom of speech. Why is it that countries like Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, Greece, Spain, which were horrible, horrible dictatorships through the 70s, they were nasty dictatorships through the 70s and 80s, all by themselves, without color revolution, became democratic in the 1990s and early 2000s? Because they had all industrialized. And the next stage of growth, manufacturing requires a strong state.
Yes.
Services and high-end, just the top-level design manufacturing, which is what Apple does, requires the state to take a backseat. They all prioritize their economic well-being, which is why they became democracies. It wasn't out of the goodness of anybody's heart. It wasn't the benefits of the American alliance, though you can say it was in the sense that they were all integrated into that economy. They all became democracies because of that. Okay. China understands that. They can't afford for it to happen because it weakens the grip on power. Why do you think they're trying to force people into manufacturing jobs, low-end manufacturing jobs, which technically should no longer be sustained by the Chinese? The Chinese should be moving up the ladder. In some things like cars, for example, they have. I can honestly tell you a BYD is a far, far superior car to any of the German or BMW, Mercedes shit cars that have started electric vehicles. At the same time, and they're ahead of Tesla in terms of automatic driving, as in driverless driving. At the same time, a lot of their industry is way, way behind. You still can't be manufacturing toothbrushes and tooth bulbs and things, light bulbs and things like that. But they are. Okay, so it's when that comes crashing, and it will come crashing.
And China needs India.
They need to... No, they don't need India. That's the thing. They don't.
No, with considering the tariffs that US is going to put?
They don't. Because understand, we keep thinking they need us, whereas China keeps showing us that they don't. In 1962, our great fallacy was China was isolated completely. We were the only one talking them up to the high heavens. They needed us. They did not need us. The belief that any country chooses economics and the welfare of its people over ideology is the most misguided belief around. The peak of the Holocaust actually started happening when the tide had already turned. It started with Operation Barbarossa. The line had ossified with the Battle of Moscow. Moscow and the great mistake at Stalingrad that came later, and St. Petersburg, Moscow, and Stalingrad. So Leningrad, Moscow, Stalingrad. Stalingrad was later, but Leningrad and Moscow were before. Hitler said, wait, there are all these combing operations we need to do because there's lots of Red Army units trapped behind our lines that we need to. That is when Moscow was lost. Do you know most of the killings of the Holocaust? Half the killings happened at that period. 3 million were killed in that period.
Okay.
And because they couldn't find people concentrated at one point, much more. And it was the army that did the killing. You know, there's this notion of the good army. The army didn't do the killing. It was the Nazi party bullshit. It was the army that did most of the killing. The rest of the Holocaust was what Auschwitz and Birkenau and all those places were mop-up operations that were to catch all the isolated pockets here and there. Okay? And it took up enormous German resources to get them all there, but they still did it. They ramped up operations when the tide had completely turned. You look at North Korea, when it had to choose between ideology and moving forward with life. Till 1979, North Korea was the success story, South Korea was the failure. They didn't choose economic development, they chose ideology. Now, China has killed more of its population than North Korea has. You think they're going to think twice about... I think people live in fool's paradise if you think they're going to choose economics over survival. No. China is becoming more dangerous by the day. I don't know if it's going to be targeted at us. They might go after Vietnam. They might go after Taiwan. They'll choose one big tamasha. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't want... I mean, look, I would prepare for it. You know, prepare for the worst, hope for the best.
But with these things that are going on? All right.
And you know, the moment I say, look, we can... Listen, this is just basic economics, right? A country with the deeper industrial supply chains. It doesn't matter what kind of technology and willpower and elan you have. Ultimately, the industrial supply chain wins out. The South had better generals. The North had all the industry, which is why the North won the American Civil War. Okay. Russia might be a complete joker when it comes to the military. But their military industrial strength is so great. It doesn't matter what Ukraine gets supply with. We all know this. I mean, since 2022, we know Russia. I mean, it's taken a much longer than a lot of us thought. But Russia is ultimately going to win this war. In any prolonged war between India and China, really, I mean, it doesn't matter what weapons you get. First of all, you won't be able to absorb 90% of those weapons. Okay, like the Ukrainians haven't been able to absorb it. Right? I mean, if you ask me the question, where is the Russian Air Force? I will turn back and ask you, where the hell is the Ukrainian Air Force? They've gotten F-16s, they've gotten whatever they wanted, but still you're not able to. Why? And you know, the failure of the F-16 and whatever to show results on the battlefield is exactly what I mean, that modern Western weapons are system of systems. By themselves, they don't change much. You have to buy a whole ecosystem for them to change everything, right? It's not... I give us a month, and I don't want to see that when it happens.
A month for?
A month, we may have the upper hand.
Oh, right. Between India and China.
Otherwise, get the tactical nukes ready.
Okay, bum.
But the problem is they have a no first use. The Chinese new first use is caveated. It's no first use except on Chinese territory. So if you go into their territory, now the problem is, do they consider that their territory or our territory?
And it's safe to assume if China and India get into war, Pakistan will definitely.
Listen,
100%.
Every time we have gamed this situation.
Right.
Every time Pakistan and us have fought, this is war games we're talking about, not real. China has never entered. In fact, they've actually pulled the rug from under the Pakistanis. They don't have a very high opinion of the Pakistanis in private. But every time China and India have gotten into a war, the Pakistanis just can't resist.
Of course. Anti-India policy to the core.
You see, it's stupidity. I mean, they're a very stupid country. They're full of stupid people. They have great delusions about their strategic culture and strategic depth. They're
Number
fantastic.
one army,
The
number one.
supreme national interest. Wazir Ala, Wazir Azam. So great. Congratulations to you. I look, we've had years to fix this. We've not fixed it. If you break it, you fix it.
And why do I get a feeling, and a lot of people do get a feeling, that we're buying weapons for the sake of it.
Of course we are.
Right? We're buying, probably, I hope, I don't know whether we will buy or not.
It's a mix. It's a mix of incompetence and corruption. In most cases, it is corruption masquerading as incompetence.
Yes.
Because you can't be prosecuted for incompetence in the Indian system.
Transfer ho jayega. That's the max. What's going to happen?
That's the max you can do. And the problem is, it's not even so tough to solve. A little bit of high quality macro management. If we put our minds to it, we can do a lot. Sure, we can't do everything. Say, even with the AMCA, you might have to, buy some 20-30% from abroad. But 20-30% is not bad. F-35 is 20-30% from abroad. Okay, you can make the body. Initially, you'll have to buy the engines. What the Americans want from you is, the American argument is, we're saving you from yourselves. Because your operational security is such a joke that if we give you the engine, if we give you the crystal blade technology, the Chinese will get their hands on it. We're doing you a favor. And you saw what I tweeted out with regards to all those smartwatches. They were taking it inside the goddamn nuclear submarine, which is your prize asset. There are much more damning photos, by the way. There's a mountain where a lot of your nuclear assets are stored. They're taking it inside there. Okay. They're right. If you give it to, I know 4 or 5 private companies that have gotten, Indian companies, which have gotten the security clearance because they are like, boss, you are going to follow our security process. We don't care if you're the chief of army staff. We don't care if you're the chief of defense staff. Our security process, you'll follow it. Full stop.
And there's nothing wrong in it.
There's nothing wrong in it. But in India, it's a huge
attitude,
insult.
Ego.
It's a huge insult. For example, I was recently at the airport. जब मैं कनाडा से वापस आ रहा था. Canada. These two chitias from customs. First of all, the woman was so goddamn useless. She searched my bags for 40 minutes and she didn't even know which bag it was in. She must have bribed her way. Some northeastern lady, she must have bribed her way. Her father must have bribed her way through this. I told them I've had a spinal issue. Please help me put it up. 15 minutes, nobody's helping me put it up. Then I started throwing a tantrum. 4 of them gather. They're still waiting for the coolie to come from the baggage row because it is below their dignity to help me lift up the bag. ऐसे 2 कौड़ी के इंडिया के बच्चे आपके कस्टम सर्विस में एयरपोर्ट में सर्व कर रहे हैं. And this dumb thing was so dumb. 40 minutes, bro, she didn't even know which suitcase it was in. She's a bloody national security threat. Imagine if that had been a bomb. She was checking everything except the one bag it was in. And I was also waiting to see. I was also not telling her and waiting to see how long. 40 minutes. 40 minutes. This is the auqat of your custom service. And there was a little inbred midget next to her who was like, they refused to give me their names. I went on and asked them, what is your name? What is your name?
So their names are written on them?
No, they don't display it.
Acha.
They're shit scared of giving you their names.
Complaint ho jayegi.
Then I started recording them. I started recording them. They're like, how dare you take it? So I said, show me the procedure which says you can't take it. In immigration, it says no filming. You show me where the sign says no filming here. So I filmed the entire thing. All of these are bloody useless lumps of shit. And it is not reservation, by the way. The ugly midget was a Brahmin, apparently. Useless fellow. माँ बाप ने पैसा रिश्वत दिया होगा किसी ऑफिसर को. एक एग्जाम पास नमूना. Imagine, you aren't even a top tier government officer. You're a bloody entry level piece of shit. It is it offends my ego to help a person with a back injury to lift a bag.
Well, that's the biggest problem, unfortunately. I don't see that dying.
But that said, let us mention there are some fantastic people at DRDO. My issue is you throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay, there are look, DRDO only came up with a ballistic missile program and everything. It's a runaway success. Okay, it's the same. So finally they called their supervisor with these customs guys, who was fantastic. He knew exactly what the problem was. He checked it. Okay, sorted out. What these jokers took almost 58 minutes to do, I timed it. This gentleman did it in 2 minutes. There was a reason he had been promoted. So there are, the problem is, for every one competent person at DRD or customs, you have not 4 or 5, you have 80 or 90 of these sasta chaplus single exam pass kias.
That's the story of India.
Yeah.
We've summed it up. That's the story of India.
So what do you do?
Sure. On that note, it was really, really nice talking to you.
I'm sorry I've depressed all of you, but I'm hoping you will get a nasty, rude wake-up shock. I'm sure lots of reaction videos will come out.
And more importantly...
And one thing Vaibhav tells me is every time I put out your podcast, I get ready for all the galis coming in the comments.
That's okay.
Ganja, homo, mota, takla, Boeing ka dalla, Lockheed ka dalla. Apparently, I must be a super genius, bro. I am simultaneously an Israeli agent, a Russian agent.
How do you do that?
I don't know, bro. I don't know. But clearly I'm a genius.
Yeah. So once again, thank you so very much for coming to our podcast. It was really, really nice talking to you. And I would request all of you guys to write it in the comment section that we need Abhijit every week.
Galiyan bhi do. That also helps the comment section, by the way. It helps the monetization. So please feel free to abuse me liberally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And please feel free to make reaction videos also, which will get more traffic out here. Except those two chutias who, there's that one, I don't know, I forget who the fuck that fellow is. He called me Zubair, defense ka Zubair. And I said, bloody little shit, was so shit scared he gave me an address in fucking America. Bloody bhikari lives in Hyderabad. Then I wrote to YouTube and got his address in Hyderabad. He's like, oh, this is my little brother. My little brother has cancer. All bullshit. He doesn't have a little brother. The little brother never had any cancer, nothing. Started bloody shitting his pants. ऐसे दो कौड़ी के भिकारी लोग जो रास्ते में स्नेक ऑयल बेचते हैं, except them, all the rest of you, please feel free to abuse me.
So once again, thank you so much for watching this podcast. We look forward to hearing from you guys. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and please ask Abhijit to come back again. Thank you.